The brutal truth about men who overthink. Stoicism. You're not broken because you think too much. You're crippled because you've confused thinking with doing. That voice in your head, the one running scenarios, rehearsing conversations, analyzing every angle, it's not protecting you, it's paralyzing you. And somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself that more thought equals more clarity. But here's what the Stoics knew that you're still learning. Clarity doesn't come from endless analysis. It comes from decisive action. The man who waits for perfect understanding never moves. The man who acts despite uncertainty, he learns, he grows, he becomes. And if you're tired of being trapped in your own head, if you're ready to turn that racing mind into focused power, then this is where it begins. Consider subscribing for the part of you that's done rehearsing and ready to perform. There's a quiet epidemic among intelligent men. Not laziness, not lack of ambition, but something more insidious. Paralysis by analysis. You've got the capacity, you've got the drive, but somewhere between thought and action, you get stuck. You plan the business, but never launch it. You rehearse the conversation, but never have it. You design the life, but never build it. And the cruelest part? You feel productive while you're stuck, because thinking feels like progress. Researching feels like preparation. Strategizing feels like moving forward, but it's not. It's a sophisticated form of procrastination, a way to stay busy while avoiding risk, a method of maintaining the illusion of control while surrendering real power. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't being morbid. He was confronting you with reality. Time is running out while you're stuck in your head. Life is happening while you're planning for it. The overthinking mind isn't just annoying, it's expensive. It costs you opportunities, relationships, momentum, years. Because while you're calculating the perfect move, someone less intelligent but more decisive is making the move. While you're waiting for certainty, someone else is learning through failure. While you're protecting yourself from mistakes, someone else is building the wisdom that only mistakes can teach. And deep down, you know this. That's why it hurts. That's why you're here. Law 1. The law of finite thought currency. The concept. Your mind has a budget. Every thought, every analysis, every mental simulation costs you something. And most men are bankrupt by noon without realizing they've been spending recklessly. That exhaustion you feel? It's not from doing too much. It's from thinking about doing too much. The Stoics understood that mental energy, like any resource, must be allocated with ruthless precision. The reality. Think about your morning. Before you even leave the house, you've already run 50 scenarios. What if the meeting goes poorly? What if they ask that question you're not prepared for? What if you say the wrong thing? Each hypothetical drains you. Each simulation spends currency you needed for actual decisions. By the time you face the real moment, you're already depleted. Not because the moment was hard, because you lived it 20 times in your head first. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." But the overthinker never gets to embodiment because he's forever refining the philosophy, forever perfecting the approach, forever waiting for the version of the plan that accounts for every variable. And variables are infinite. What changes? When you start treating thought as currency, you become selective. You stop spending mental energy on things outside your control. You stop rehearsing conversations that may never happen. You stop planning for contingencies that exist only in anxiety's imagination. You save your cognitive power for the decisions that matter. for the actions that move you forward, for the moments that actually require your full presence. This doesn't mean you stop thinking. It means you stop thinking in circles. You think once, deeply, then you decide. And once you decide, you move. No endless reconsideration. No perpetual second-guessing. You honor the decision by following through. That's how you conserve energy. That's how you build momentum. That's how you stop feeling exhausted by your own mind. The practice. Set a timer. Give yourself 10 minutes to think through a decision. When the timer ends, you choose. Not because you have perfect information, because the thinking window is closed. This trains you to make decisions with incomplete data, to trust your judgment under constraint, to act despite uncertainty. And here's what you'll discover. The decision you make in 10 minutes is rarely worse than the one you'd make after 3 days of deliberation. Often, it's better, because it's cleaner, uncorrupted by anxiety, undiluted by overthought. Law 2. The law of movement over perfection. The concept. Perfection is the ultimate trap. It sounds noble. I just want to do this right. But it's cowardice dressed in virtue. Because what you're really saying is, I'm afraid to be judged for something imperfect. So you wait. You refine. You polish something that doesn't exist yet into something that still won't exist because you never started. The reality. There's a man you admire, someone who's built something you want to build, and you study him, trying to reverse engineer his success. But here's what you miss. He didn't start with what he has now. He started with something messy, incomplete, probably embarrassing in hindsight. But he started. And through starting, through the friction of reality pushing back on his ideas, he learned. He adjusted. He improved. You're trying to skip that part. You want to start with version 10.0, but life doesn't work that way. Version 1.0 is supposed to be rough. That's not a flaw in the system. That's the system. Seneca wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." Your overthinking makes easy things hard. Because you've added layers of complexity that don't exist in the action itself, only in your anticipation of it. What changes? When you embrace imperfect action, you stop being at war with reality. You stop demanding certainty before you move. You accept that learning happens through iteration, not contemplation. The man who publishes the imperfect article learns more than the man who perfects the article he never publishes. The man who has the awkward conversation grows more than the man who scripts the perfect conversation he never initiates. Movement teaches. Stillness just rehearses. And here's the paradox. Once you start moving, the path clarifies. The questions you thought you needed answered become irrelevant. New, better questions emerge, ones you couldn't have imagined from the starting line. But you only get those questions by moving, by encountering real friction, real feedback, real consequences. The practice. Adopt a 70% rule. If you're 70% confident in your understanding, you act. Not because 70% is perfect, because it's sufficient. Because the remaining 30% can only be learned through action. This forces you out of the overthinking loop. It gives you permission to be a beginner, to stumble, to learn publicly. And once you start doing this, you'll realize something the overthinker never learns. Most of your fears about imperfection were imagined. Reality is kinder than your rehearsals. People care less about your mistakes than your mind told you they would. And the cost of imperfect action is almost always lower than the cost of perfect inaction. Law 3. The law of declared limitations. The concept. The overthinking mind treats every decision like it's final, permanent, irreversible. So you hesitate, because if you can't undo it, you better get it exactly right. But most decisions aren't final. They're tests, experiments, data points. And when you declare that up front, when you set boundaries around how long you'll commit before you reassess, you free yourself to move. The reality. You want to start a new project, but you're paralyzed by commitment. What if you choose wrong? What if you waste time? What if you invest energy into something that doesn't work out? So you don't start. You stay stuck in research mode, gathering information, weighing options, waiting for the universe to send a sign that never comes. But here's what you're missing. Commitment doesn't have to be forever to be valuable. You don't need to know if this is your life's work before you begin. You just need to know if it's your next 3 months' work. That's it. Declare the limitation. I will try this for 90 days, then I'll evaluate. Suddenly the weight lifts, because you're not making a lifelong vow. You're running an experiment. And experiments are designed to produce data, not certainty. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. He didn't ask, "What is the meaning of my entire life?" He asked, "What is the right action in this moment?" He limited his focus to what was controllable, immediate, actionable. And through that practice, the larger meaning emerged. Not before the action, through it. What changes? When you declare limitations, you convert overwhelming decisions into manageable experiments. Instead of, "Should I change careers?" you ask, "Should I spend 6 months exploring this adjacent field?" Instead of, "Is this the right relationship?" you ask, "Is this relationship worth investing the next year into?" You're not avoiding commitment. You're structuring it intelligently, giving yourself permission to learn without the crushing weight of permanence. This also protects you from sunk cost fallacy. The overthinker often stays in bad situations because he's already invested so much thought into them. "I've analyzed this relationship for 2 years. I can't just walk away." But that's exactly backward. The time you've spent thinking doesn't obligate you to more time suffering. Declare the limitation. I've given this my full effort for X time. I have enough data to decide. Then decide. The practice. Before starting anything, declare your review point. I will do this daily for 30 days, then assess. I will pursue this opportunity for 6 months, then evaluate fit. This removes the pressure of perfect foresight. You're not claiming to know the future. You're claiming to have a process for learning it. And that process includes movement, feedback, and honest reassessment. Not endless pre-analysis, not waiting for certainty that will never arrive. Action within boundaries. That's how you escape the overthinking trap without becoming reckless. Law 4. The law of external validation. The concept. The overthinker's greatest fear isn't failure, it's judgment. That's why he rehearses, why he overprepares, why he stays stuck. He's trying to control how others perceive him by controlling every variable. But here's the trap. You can't. People will judge you regardless. The perfect plan gets criticized. The flawless execution gets misunderstood. And the man who waited for universal approval dies waiting. The reality. You're running those mental simulations again, imagining how they'll react, what they'll think, what they'll say behind your back. And each simulation branches into another. If I say this, they might think that. But if they think that, I should clarify this other thing. But that might make me seem defensive. And on it goes. An infinite loop of trying to manage perceptions you don't control. Epictetus cuts through this cleanly. If someone criticizes you, consider whether what they say is true. If it is, correct it. If not, laugh at it. 2 options. Not 17, not 43. 2. Is it true or not? That's the only analysis that matters. Everything else, their tone, their motive, their credibility, is noise. And the overthinker drowns in that noise because he's trying to account for everyone's perspective simultaneously. What changes? When you stop optimizing for external validation, your decisions become clearer, faster, because you're no longer running them through the filter of what will they think. You're running them through what aligns with my values. And that question has a much simpler answer. You can't control their opinion. You can control your integrity. And when you choose integrity over approval, something shifts. You stop feeling responsible for how people interpret you. You start feeling responsible only for being truthful. This doesn't make you indifferent. It makes you free. Free to speak honestly without over-explaining. Free to make decisions without consensus. Free to be misunderstood without needing to correct every misconception. Because you know who you are. You know what you stand for. And their confusion about that is their work, not yours. The practice. Next time you catch yourself rehearsing what you'll say, stop. Write down your core message in one sentence. Then say that sentence. Don't add 17 caveats to protect yourself from every possible misinterpretation. Don't pre-defend against criticism that hasn't arrived. Just say the thing, clearly, directly. Then let it land however it lands. This trains you to trust your judgment more than their reaction, to value clarity over approval, to move with confidence even when consensus doesn't exist. And you'll find that most people respect directness more than they respect your carefully crafted, overthought, defensive position. Because directness feels like strength, and strength doesn't need to explain itself. Law 5. The law of productive the concept. Infinite options create infinite paralysis. The overthinker believes more information leads to better decisions. So he researches, compares, considers. But here's the paradox. Constraint produces clarity. When you limit your options deliberately, your mind stops spinning and starts deciding. That's not restriction. That's liberation. The reality. You've been researching productivity systems for 3 weeks. You've read about GTD, Zettelkasten, bullet journaling, time blocking, the Eisenhower matrix, Pomodoro technique. You've watched videos, compared apps, built spreadsheets analyzing the pros and cons of each approach. And after all that research, you're still not productive. Because you never picked one and committed. You're stuck in the meta work, working on the system for work instead of just working. This pattern repeats everywhere. Choosing a diet, finding a workout routine, selecting a career path. The overthinker treats every decision like a research project. But research has diminishing returns. After a certain point, more information doesn't improve the decision. It just delays it. And delay has a cost. A real, measurable cost in lost time, lost momentum, lost confidence. Seneca understood this. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. When you keep all options open, you commit to none. And without commitment, there's no depth, no mastery, no real progress, just surface-level sampling of infinite possibilities. The jack of all trades, master of none. Not because you lack ability, because you lack constraint. What changes? When you impose productive constraint, you force decision. I will choose one of these 3 options by Friday, not 17 options, 3. And you will choose by a deadline, not someday, Friday. This structure removes the endless optimization trap. You can't keep researching if you've limited yourself to 3 pre-vetted choices and a hard deadline. You have to think, then decide, then move. And here's what happens. The decision is usually fine, not perfect, fine. And fine executed beats perfect endlessly contemplated. Because execution teaches you things contemplation can't. You learn what actually works through friction with reality, not through hypothetical comparison. And often, the differences you agonized over in analysis turn out to be trivial in practice. The practice. Implement the rule of 3 and a deadline for every decision. Select your top 3 options. Give yourself a specific date to choose. Then choose based on your best judgment at that time. No extending the deadline, no adding a 4th option, no reopening the research phase. This builds your decision-making muscle. It trains you to trust yourself under constraint. And over time, you'll notice something. Your decisions don't get worse, they just happen faster. And that speed compounds into momentum, into action, into results. While the perpetual researcher is still comparing options, you're 3 iterations deep into real-world learning. Law 6. The law of somatic wisdom. The concept. Your body knows things your mind is still debating. That tension in your chest when you're about to say yes to something you should decline? That's not anxiety. That's information. The overthinker tries to think his way through every decision, but some wisdom lives below thought, in sensation, in gut feeling, in what your nervous system knows before your conscious mind catches up. The reality. You're in a conversation and something feels off. You can't articulate why. There's no logical reason to distrust this person. They're saying all the right things. But your body is tight. Your breathing is shallow. There's a subtle contraction in your solar plexus. The overthinker ignores this. He thinks, I'm probably just being paranoid. I should give them the benefit of the doubt. So he overrides the signal. And 6 months later, when the betrayal happens, he realizes his body knew. He just didn't listen. This happens in reverse, too. You're considering a bold move, starting the business, having the difficult conversation, making the commitment. And your mind is screaming, danger, listing every possible way it could go wrong. But beneath that mental noise, there's a calm, a quiet alignment in your gut that says, this is right. The overthinker trusts the noise and ignores the calm. He stays stuck, listening to the fearful mind instead of the aligned body. Carl Jung wrote, "The unconscious always knows before the conscious mind." Your body is the bridge to that unconscious knowing. It processes patterns, reads micro-expressions, senses energy shifts your conscious mind is too slow to track. But the overthinker has spent so long living in his head that he's severed the connection. He's become all analysis, no instinct, all thought, no feeling. What changes? When you reconnect with somatic wisdom, decision-making becomes simpler. You still think, but you don't only think. You check in with your body. You ask, how does this feel? And you learn to distinguish between fear, which contracts and guards, and aligned instinct, which expands even while challenging you. Fear says, danger, retreat. Aligned instinct says, this is hard, but it's right. This doesn't mean you follow every impulse. It means you include your body's intelligence in the decision-making process. Because your nervous system has evolutionary wisdom that your prefrontal cortex doesn't. It knows when something is genuinely threatening versus just uncomfortable. When someone is trustworthy versus performing trustworthiness. When you're avoiding growth versus protecting yourself from harm. The practice. Before making your next significant decision, get out of your head, literally. Go for a walk. No phone, no podcast, just you and movement. As you walk, hold the decision in your awareness without trying to solve it. Notice what your body does. Does your chest tighten? Do your shoulders drop? Does your breathing deepen or shorten? These signals are data. Not the only data, but valid data. And when you combine mental analysis with somatic awareness, you make better decisions, clearer decisions, decisions that account for knowledge you can't fully articulate, but absolutely possess. The overthinker lives entirely in simulation. But simulation happens in the mind alone. Real wisdom requires the whole system: body, mind, emotion, instinct. When you engage all of it, you stop overthinking, because you're no longer trying to figure everything out cognitively. You're consulting the full intelligence available to you. And that full intelligence is wiser than your racing thoughts could ever be. Law 7. The law of courageous incompletion. The concept. You don't need to have it all figured out before you start. That's not wisdom. That's control disguised as wisdom. Real courage isn't acting with certainty. It's acting despite uncertainty. It's being willing to step into the arena with incomplete understanding, trusting that the arena itself will teach you what preparation never could. The reality. Every great thing you admire was built by someone who didn't know how it would end. They didn't have the full map. They had a direction, maybe a vision, but the path revealed itself through walking it. Yet you're demanding perfect foresight before you take step 1. You want to know exactly how the book will end before you write chapter 1. Exactly how the business will scale before you serve customer 1. Exactly how the relationship will evolve before you have conversation 1. But that's not how life works. Life is emergent. It unfolds through participation, not observation. Marcus Aurelius led Rome without knowing if his decisions would preserve or destroy an empire. He couldn't predict the future. He could only honor his principles in each present moment and trust that right action compounds into right outcomes. Not always, not guaranteed, but more reliably than overthought inaction. The overthinker wants insurance, a guarantee that his effort won't be wasted, that his vulnerability won't be punished, that his investment will pay off. But life doesn't offer that insurance. It offers only this: the certainty that inaction guarantees nothing changes, and the possibility that action, however imperfect, might lead somewhere worth being. What changes? When you embrace courageous incompletion, you stop waiting for permission from a future you can't predict. You grant yourself permission to begin, to learn, to fail, to iterate. You stop treating every decision like it needs to be defended to some imaginary tribunal of judgment. You start treating decisions like experiments, and experiments are designed to produce learning, not perfection. This shift changes everything. You publish the imperfect work. You start the awkward conversation. You launch the unfinished project. Not because you're reckless, because you're realistic. You understand that growth lives on the other side of discomfort, and the only way through discomfort is through it, not around it, not after you've thought about it for 3 more years. Through it, now. The practice. Identify one thing you've been overthinking. One project, decision, or conversation you've been mentally rehearsing but never executing. Set a 48-hour deadline. Within 48 hours, you will take one concrete action toward it. Not the perfect action, not the complete action, just one real step that moves it from your head into the world. Maybe it's sending the email. Maybe it's booking the appointment. Maybe it's publishing the draft. Whatever it is, do it incomplete. Do it imperfect. Do it afraid. But do it. Because here's the truth. The overthinker never learns until he finally moves. The gap between your fearful imagination and actual reality is enormous. Most of what you're afraid of doesn't happen, and the things that do happen are usually manageable. Often, they're even good, but you'll never know from the safety of your thoughts. You only know by stepping into the arena. Integration, the Stoics didn't promise you an easy path. They promised you a clear one. Master yourself or be mastered by everything else. And the overthinking mind is just another master you've been serving. A tyrant that demands endless analysis, perfect planning, guaranteed outcomes before it grants permission to live. But you don't need permission. You never did. What you need is the courage to act with incomplete information, the humility to be imperfect publicly, the wisdom to trust that movement teaches what stillness never will, and the clarity to know that the life you want isn't waiting for you to figure everything out. It's waiting for you to start. Every law we've covered is a tool, a way to interrupt the overthinking loop and redirect that mental energy toward action, toward learning, toward becoming. Use them. Not all at once, not perfectly, but consistently. And watch what happens when you stop trying to think your way to clarity and start acting your way there. Because here's what the overthinker refuses to believe until he experiences it. Clarity comes from doing. Confidence comes from trying. Wisdom comes from failing. And the man who waits for perfect understanding before he moves spends his entire life preparing for a journey he never takes. You've spent enough time in your head. You know what you need to do. The conversation you've been avoiding. The project you've been delaying. The decision you've been overthinking into paralysis. You know, and deep down, you know that more thought won't make it clearer. Only action will. So here's your challenge. Pick one thing, just one, and move on it today. Not perfectly, not with total certainty, but with the courage to be incomplete and the trust that the path reveals itself to those who walk it. The quiet work you do today, the decision you finally make, the step you finally take, is shaping the strength they'll never see coming. Stay focused, stay grounded, and remember, thinking without action is just rehearsal, and you've rehearsed long enough.